Hello and welcome, everyone. We're very happy to have you here with us today. Thank you for taking the time to join today's session. Today, we're bringing together people from different parts of the world, all connected by one shared goal, which is improving safety in the operating room. In today's operating rooms, we rely on technology almost every moment, from surgical equipment to digital systems. These tools help healthcare professionals care for patients and save lives. But at the same time, if these systems are not used safely or protected properly, they can also create risks. And that is why today's session is so important. My name is Farhad Zikria, and I serve as the Secretary for Performance, Coordination, and Reporting with the TORG Global Education and Training Committee, and I'm joining you today from California, United States. On behalf of the Operating Room Global, also known as TORG, and the Global Education and Training Committee, I warmly welcome you to today's global webinar. We are very pleased to see such a diverse audience joining us today. Participants include surgeons, anesthesia providers, nurses, surgical technologists, educators, researchers, students, and healthcare professionals from many parts of the world. Before we continue, we encourage everyone to actively participate during today's session. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself by sharing your name, your professional title, and the country you're joining from. You're also welcome to post your questions in the chat box at any time during the presentations. Our moderation team will collect the questions and bring them forward during the Q&A session. For those who may be joining a TORG session for the first time, here is a short introduction to the organization behind today's event. The Operating Room Global, or TORG, is a multidisciplinary professional platform representing more than 260,000 surgical and preoperative professionals across over 110 countries, making it the largest global network of operating room professionals. TORG brings together 42 healthcare disciplines and it operates as a non-governmental organization founded in Nigeria in August 2015. Today, TORG has more than 20 active chapters around the world, including representation across 31 African countries. The mission of TORG is to advance surgical and preoperative care through education, research, advocacy, innovation, and capacity building, with a strong focus on patient safety, equity, and strengthening healthcare systems worldwide. Today, TORG is also an internationally accredited continuing professional development provider, recognized by the CPD Group, highlighting the quality and global relevance of its educational programs. The organization's work is supported by the Operating Room Global Center for Education, Research and Innovation incorporated in Ireland, which leads global initiatives in education, research, innovation, and partnerships. TORG also proudly hosts its affiliated journal, the Operating Room Journal, an open-access, peer-reviewed international journal launched in May 2025, which provides a platform for research that informs surgical practice and healthcare policy worldwide. In addition, TORG operates its own institutional review board, the TORG IRB, officially registered with the United States Office for Human Research Protections, reinforcing its commitment to ethical and responsible research. One of the most unique aspects of TORG is that it's powered by a volunteer-led leadership model, where professionals from around the world contribute their time, expertise, and dedication to strengthen global surgical care. TORG also collaborates with global alliances, including the G4 Alliance and Intersurgeon, and is listed with the Union of International Associations and the Global Civil Society Database, reflecting its global reach and accountability. Today's webinar will cover two important topics related to safety and technology in the operating room. Our first presentation is Equipment Safety and Technology-Related Risks in the Operating Room, which will be delivered by Mr. Jessie Lopez. Our second presentation is Cybersecurity and Digital Safety in the Operating Room Environment, which will be delivered by Mr. DeJuan Kennedy. Both topics highlight the growing importance of technology safety and digital awareness in modern operating room environments. We're honored to have both speakers with us today, and we will begin the session now.
Hello, everyone. Good day, distinguished colleagues and the member of the Operating Torch Room Global Community. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for Topic 1, Equipment Safety and Technology-Related Risk in the Operating Room. We are honored to have Mr. Jessie Lopez with us today. Mr. Lopez is highly credentialed sterile processing and healthcare quality professional, holding numerous certifications including CRCST, CHL, CER, CIS, CSPDT, CFER, CSIS, CASSPT, TSC, GST, and CQIA. He currently serves as an SPT, CSPD, CSSD, Quality Assurance Manager in the United States, bringing extensive expertise in sterile processing standards, equipment safety compliance, quality assurance system, and regulatory best practices. With his deep experience in sterile processing departments and technology oversight, Mr. Jesse Lopez is uniquely positioned to discuss the critical intersection between the equipment safety, technology, interrogation, and risk mitigation in the operating room environment. His work directly contributes to improving surgical safety, infection prevention, and system reliability. We are delighted to have him to share his experience with us today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Jesse Lopez. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, thumbs up if you can, if you can't. Yes, awesome. Good. Thank you guys for having me again. I am delighted to be here to share my experience and educate everyone in this very important topic. I'm going to share my screen here if I can. All right. Can everybody see my screen right now?
It's still pulling up, Jesse.
Yes.
There you
Yeah,
go.
now I
There.
can see.
You're good.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, give me a second here. Try to blow this up on the big screen. There you go. And where's that? All right, so the title of this presentation is Equipment Safety and Technology Related Risk in the OR. I wanted to do a twist on this because we technically, as nurses and surgeons and practitioners, we know what we walk into every single day. As a sterile processing technician and a former surgical technician, every day I walk into the same thing, and we focus so much on the patient. And we sometimes get lost in the OR thinking about what we have to do for the patient to make sure that everything is correct and that patient goes home better than what they came into the operating room. I wanted to look at this in the reverse order. Many departments within the facility services the OR, but in turn, we have to reciprocate that service. So I want to look at safety in the reverse order of what happens in the OR and how we can protect those who service us. My name is Jessie Lopez. Again, I'm here from the United States. We already went through all my credentials with all the alphabets behind my name. I do this because, again, I want to be the individual that when people have questions, you can come to me and I can get those answers for you. If I don't have them right away, I know where to get them from. I've been in this field for 17 years. And I split it between the operating room as a surgical technologist, as well as a sterile processing technician, and worked my way up to educator and quality assurance manager at my current facility. I'm also the owner of WDYD CSP. If you guys are on any of the social medias, such as YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and now on TikTok, I offer informational videos there, question and answers, and kind of get your minds thinking about what is it that we do every single day, why we do it, and should we be thinking of different ways. I'm also a consultant for many facilities, and I also have a training program that I do virtually for sterile processing and endoscope reprocessing. Enough about me. I want to look at what it takes to prepare an operating room. For some of us that are surgeons and nurses and surgical techs, this is almost like we can do this almost blindfoldedly, right? We want to identify the individuals that are actually behind the scenes to make that operating room look the way it is every single time we walk into that operating room and what the expectation is. We're going to outline how safety keeps the operating room functional and ready for all. And we're going to identify some of these pain points and safety breaches. Again, from the perspective of what we do in the operating room to those that are going to have to step in or handle any of the equipment in the operating room. So let's start off with, what do we see when we walk into an operating room for the first time after every single case? We should be seeing clean floors, but do we know who, when, how, and why they clean those floors? Okay, there's another team that comes in behind the operating room. It's not the nurses or the surgical tech. It's not the sterile processing technicians, and it's definitely not the surgeon or the anesthesiologist grabbing mops and wipes and cleaning those operating rooms, right? There's a whole other team in charge of dealing with the unknown. Okay, we practice standard or universal precaution because we don't know. That team has no idea what surgery just took place in there, what was wrong with that patient, and how extensive that surgery was. For most of us that are surgical technologists or nurses, we don't see the blood and gore that people portray that happens in the operating room. Very rare do we see that, but there are times where it gets a little crazy in there. This team has to be prepared for that. Okay, this is typically the EVS team or whatever team is going to go in there. They have a very small window on when to turn that room over because they require it depending on how big your facility is, with the right chemistry and the right equipment. And they do it so that the next patient isn't exposed to whatever disease, whatever microorganisms were present in that room prior. The equipment, okay, depending on the facility and depending on the surgery, the equipment varies from patient to patient. The tables are different from your bariatric tables, your orthopedic tables, your general tables. You might need X-ray units in there, the C units. All that happens to be in that room, okay? Nice and organized and ready to go, okay? Do we know if it works when we first go into that room? No one's going in there prior and testing this equipment out. We're setting it all up, right? Okay, but who tests those units? Where did they come from? Who purchased it? This is a whole other department that's in charge of it, as well as the cleaning, you know, and the PMs that's required for those units. Okay, this is usually your biomedical units. I already mentioned the operating tables. Okay, who was the last patient on it? Is the next patient going to be a bariatric patient? You're not going to put that patient on a general table. You know, imagine having a 400 or 500 pound patient on a general table and trying to do the surgery on that patient. Specialized patients, they might be having, might have to put that patient in different positions, the Fowler position, you know, a supine or posterior position. All those positions are requiring different tables and different functions on that table. Who was last on it? Does it work? Is it clean? And is it the right one? All the back tables and the basin stands and things of that nature, those need to be able to roll freely. They need to be stable and they need to be clean, okay? The person who's not every surgical tech or every nurse is not of a specific height. You might have a smaller surgeon, a larger surgeon, anywhere from 4'11" to 6 foot 7 feet tall. So you have to accommodate for those factors in there. And of course, lighting. Okay, we're not going to do surgery in the dark unless it's a laser surgery, right? Then we have specialized lighting. You have to dim the room, specialized goggles and lighting that needs to require for those surgeries. Okay. So there's a whole other world outside of the operating room. Yes, when we're in our zone, sterile processing is the same way. We're confined to a room, typically in the basement of a facility. Most people don't even know who we are, and we're confined and we're doing the work to service other departments. The operating room, almost everyone knows where the operating room is. Okay. Every patient that walks into a hospital or facility is sitting there sweating and having thoughts about, I'm hoping that this surgery goes well. I'm hoping that everything comes out the way it's supposed to. They're very nervous. No patient cares or knows about what instrumentation is being used on. They have no idea about the equipment that's going to be used on them. They have no idea what the operating room is going to even look like. It's almost like a horror story to them when they walk in. But this whole other world that exists to everyone else that services that operating room, the people in the operating room should be aware of those individuals. EVS, as I stated, those are the ones that's going to clean your floors, your walls, your tables, get rid of the trash, the biohazards, and dispose of those sharp containers. Your biomedical team is going to make sure that all your equipment has been approved by the facility, is working, and is PM'd on a regular scheduled maintenance, right? If it's damaged, they're the ones that's going to send them out for repair or replace them. Okay, that is important because you can't do your operation, you can't do your patient care unless this equipment is valid. The facilities, airflow, lighting, the integrity of the room. Is there air available? Are the pipings for the tanks working in there? Facilities is in charge of all that. The engineering department is all in charge of all that. There's light bulbs. You don't run to Home Depot or to your department stores and buy a light bulb and change it yourself. There's specific lightings in those rooms. And then sterile processing or material management, also known as SPD, CSSD, MDRs, or CSPs. They may clean some of your equipment. They may even clean some of your tables and some of your materials in there. Your surgical instrumentations, your devices, and your consumables or single-use items may come from these departments. So safety starts in the beginning, but what happens at the end of a case? Okay? Do we just gather our stuff and leave? Do we just say, okay, time for the next patient, or I got a 15-minute break, let's go out, okay? Think about the equipment. What happens if you're using a robotic, doing a robotic surgery, and you leave one of those robotic arms connected to the units? What can happen? Well, if it's not sent to sterile processing, you're gonna have a device shortage because now you're looking for that monopolar scissor, and maybe you have 6 or 7, but maybe you have 10 cases. You can't turn that over. The device might get damaged because EVS might go in there and start cleaning. They don't know what that is. They might bump into it. They might break a device. They might dislodge it incorrectly. The environmental contamination. A lot of times, those robotic units are moved from room to room. And if you have a dirty instrument on that device or on that unit, you're cross-contaminating. You're introducing this into the environment. Personal injury. While EVS or even biomedical is servicing that equipment, cleaning the room, they might back up and get cut on one of those units or bump into it, get punctured. They don't know what it is. They've never seen it on the machine. All that can happen if we're not careful with what we do at the end of a case. Equipment is damaged during a surgery, but not reported out. Who does that impact? Your circulating nurse, okay? Your circulating nurse is expecting this device to work, this equipment to work when they go into a case, okay? If it wasn't reported from the case before, from the circulators before, or anybody in that room before, how do they know? Biomedical, they can't send the unit out for repair. They failed to send it out for repair. They don't even know it's damaged because, again, no reporting, no communication. If sterile processing is in charge and EVS is in charge of cleaning that unit, okay? They might further damage that unit because they don't know where the damage is at, cause some type of water invasion, chemical invasion. There might be microorganisms that seep into that damaged area. And again, now you're causing a cross-contamination issue. Typically, EVS isn't fully PPE'd when they go into a unit to clean it. They may have on a mask and maybe some gloves, but they don't have on the gowns and the face shield. So while they're moving things around, something may spray out of there and cause damage or cause an injury or an exposure to one of those employees. All right. Just because the surgery was successful does not mean that safety protocols end, okay? We have to make sure that when we close a room, okay, and surgery's over, we're doing our due diligence to remove all the harm that can happen to the people that's going to go in there after the surgery is done, okay? How the room is closed is just as important as how it was open, okay? You're going to do your checks and balances in the beginning. Okay, does this equipment turn on? Okay, is it in the right position? Do we have the right instrumentation? Is the right table in there? Is the anesthesia unit in the right place? Is the air on? Do we have the right gases, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, we expect to have little complications during surgery. Okay, we don't want to have to focus on, the equipment. Our focus in the operating room is the patient, ensuring that everything from A to Z goes in order, okay? But what are we doing to ensure future safety, and what are we doing to keep those prepared for the next case? These are some things to consider. At the end of the case, that we shut off our units properly, okay? Or that we take the cord out improperly from the unit or from the lighting unit, pulled it out, caused some damage to the cord, maybe to the prongs, okay? Were all consumables disposed of? Did we leave any sharps on our devices? Did we remove all or account for all of our sponges and place them in the right receptacle, okay? Was point of use treatment performed in timely manners? Point of use treatment is where we remove gross soils from our equipment and our devices. We remove the consumables at points of use and don't transport them to another area. We place items in the right containers and transport them in a way to prevent environmental contamination, okay? In facilities, there are different receptacles for waste: biohazard, pathological, non-hazardous waste, sharps, chemotherapy and chemical waste, and pharmaceutical hazards. Some facilities have all these, some may condense some of these, but it's important that we don't throw general sharps into general trash. Again, someone has to empty that trash, okay? And it's not all the time where we're handling it from one area. We may have to grab from the bottom, and imagine, we don't know that there's a sharp blade in there, wind up getting cut, okay? Now you caused an injury because you didn't dispose of something properly. Biohazard waste, blood, okay, the liquids that are collected during surgery, that has to be disposed of properly, okay? If you're throwing that in general trash or even in a sharps container, okay, you can cause, again, cross-contamination. This is how we keep others safe so that we can perform to the optimum of our ability. So what happens when it's all said and done, okay? The operating room is the customer to many of the services in healthcare settings. EVS services the operating room, sterile processing, the emergency room, all those subsidiaries, or all those ancillary departments eventually have some kind of say to service the operating room. In return, the staff of the operating room should reciprocate that safety back, okay? As stated, EVS, biomedical, material management, sterile processing, facilities, and many more are those that service the OR. Their purpose is to meet the user's needs, okay? We're not going to give you a tray from sterile processing just because we're going to give it to you, okay? If you're doing a bariatric surgery, we're not going to give you a GYN tray, okay? We need to give you what you need to care for that patient, okay? We're not going to give you a robotic unit or a Da Vinci unit to perform a tonsillectomy if you're not doing a closed procedure. Okay, we're going to give you exactly what you need to perform the services that you need for that patient. Okay, again, we need to meet that user's need, and the user is the operating room. Right, we have to have that proper lighting, those airflows, the right equipment for instrumentation. It's a fan principle. Those instruments need to be functional, accurate, neat, and the room has to be clean. Imagine going into an operating room and you see the room the exact same way that you left it prior to this in the prior surgery. Imagine that delay. Imagine that impact on that patient. Imagine how pissed off that surgeon's going to be. Imagine how distraught the individuals that walked in, because no one walks into the room fully garbed up with PPE. You put your PPE on inside of the operating room. Now, if you walked into a contaminated room, imagine that. The surgeons, the surgical technologists, the circulating nurse, and even all those individuals are responsible for the safety of everyone that goes and services them. Okay. Care and handling of equipment promotes safety. Okay. If you're rough with that equipment, those devices don't belong to any other department except for the operating room. The equipment is yours. The instrumentation is yours. We're just servicing them. Okay. All we do is make sure that we're cleaning them, that they're okay to use again, and give them back. Okay. They are your equipment. So the way you handle them, the way you store them, the way you use them is important. Okay. Use equipment properly to prevent unwanted wear and damage. In sterile processing, this is always a huge a debate or a concern. Okay. A surgeon uses a needle holder improperly, or uses the wrong scissor to cut suture, or they use a scissor to cut wiring, or they use equipment improperly. Then it comes down damage, and then we have to troubleshoot what went wrong. Of course, not with integrity. You will admit what's wrong, but a lot of times we don't find the source of what went wrong with that equipment. Items are damaged. Now they have to replace, and this is a costly, in healthcare, this is extremely costly and time consuming. You want to remove and discard sharps, consumables, and place them in a proper receptacle to prevent sharp injury in person to the personnel turning over the room. I gave you the example. If you throw a sharps in a general trash, okay, the same thing. If you return a tray or equipment with the consumables still on there, the people who handle that typically don't see the consumables on that equipment. So they may not know how to properly remove it, or even know that it's a sharps, and wind up getting injured. You want to move equipment out of the way, power it down, and disconnect as needed. When you're turning over a room, EVS doesn't know. I will be honest. If I were to go into a room and see a robotic unit still powered on, my curiosity would probably overtake me and be like, wow, that looks like a video game console. I wonder what it is how it is to operate that. You power it down, there's no curiosity. Move it out the way. Okay. Newer technologies are very complex. Okay. The more technology advances, the more training is required for the individuals that service that technology, including the individuals that use it. Okay, we have to know where the emergency stops are, how to troubleshoot if something goes wrong with it. Okay, what happens if it goes bad, if it's going bad or malfunctioning while in use on a patient? We have to be trained on how to be able to troubleshoot those issues. Okay. For EVS safety, again, how the room is left matters. Okay, we don't want to have spilled blood on the floor and slip hazards. This is typically how you'll see EVS individuals walking into a room. They should have on face masks as well, but this is what they're caring for. The lights, the tables, the floors, okay? You want to clean up spills when possible, okay? In the operating room, at the end of the cases, if there was a spill, you should be either communicated, because you either are not prepared to clean up that spill, or clean it up if you are prepared to clean it up. dispose of sharps in the proper receptacle, dispose of biohazards, dispose of consumables, unplug and move that equipment out the way, communicate any abnormal circumstances. Okay. Again, they have no idea of what they're going to walk into. They don't know what that patient had. They don't know what that patient went through. They don't know how stressful or how chaotic that surgery went. Okay. If we're seeing blood on the walls, if it's under the tables, make them aware because they're doing a general cleaning. They're not doing a detailed cleaning, but they may require to do a more extensive cleaning than a general case. This should be communicated to the team coming in so that they're prepared to handle that. Biomedical safety. Okay, if you want your equipment working right, report out that damage. Report out any equipment where preventative maintenances are due, because you may walk in and go, hey, this system hasn't been maintained in quite some time. I think this was overlooked, and I don't think it's going to be safe to be used. Take care not to damage cords or receptacles. Don't run them over with tables. Make sure they're out the way when surgery is happening, because cut cords are a very common occurrence with equipment and devices during surgery. Don't alter your equipment, okay? If you have a 3-prong cord and you only have a 2-prong outlet, don't break off that 3rd prong, even though you shouldn't see 2-prong outlets in your facility. Somebody might have retrofixed it. And dispose of all consumables associated with that equipment. Again, the people who service this know what the equipment look like. They just may not be familiar with the consumables and may inadvertently clean that and send it back. Again, that's a reason to reject that equipment or that device, because again, it was a single-use device. It was a consumable. It should not have made its way back. If it doesn't have an IFU, it can't be reprocessed. Safety is ongoing, okay? It happens in the beginning with those that service you, and it happens at the end, reciprocating that safety back, okay? The risk involved in the operating room is vast, okay? Faulty cables, getting devices with cuts in the cord, okay? When you're powering it up, may cause an electrical spark or fire in the operating room, okay? Broken instruments, that breaks sterility, that carries microbes. That's a patient safety issue. That's a staff exposure issue. We know about smoke hazards, okay? When we're using cauterizing tools, if you don't have sufficient evacuation, you're breathing in those fumes. There's care being taken into that. We know that. A dirty environment increases microbial count and exposes the staff and the patients, okay? That's why we want a nice clean room turned over properly. And poor equipment maintenance, we already know what happens with that. We have tables that aren't maintained. They might not tilt to a certain degree. They may not function or rise how they should. If the wheels fail to roll, it's going to be very difficult to move it, causing musculoskeletal disorders or even imbalances because excessive force is used to roll it, or it may not be steady. Okay, so when you're placing items on there, okay, we all know when we go to a cafeteria, we got that one table that rock. We don't want that in the operating room. Okay, those behind the scene ensure that surgeries go smoothly. Okay, from an operational standpoint, that is our mission. Okay, is to service the patient, to service the user, to ensure that you don't have to worry about what it is that you're handling or using, so you can focus on the patient. Okay, it is up to the OR staff to ensure that processing and turnovers can be done safely. Communication is key. If you don't give us something back, we can't process it. If it stays in the room, we can't do anything. We're not going to sit there and run around and look for it. Okay, that communication has to happen from the OR. Okay, if an item is broken, take accountability for what happened to that item. Communicate it to the next individual so that it can be properly taken care of. Accidents happen. Okay, the operating room can go smoothly or chaotic. Okay, especially if you work in a trauma bay, that's always chaotic. Okay, so things happen, but that communication has to happen in order to keep the next patient safe and the person that processes that equipment safe. All right. Any questions, concerns, or issues?
Thank you so much, Mr. Lopez, for the very insightful presentation. We will take the questions at the end of the session. It is my great pleasure to introduce our second speaker for today's global webinar on cybersecurity and digital safety in the operating room environment. We are honored to welcome Mr. DeJuan Kennedy, a distinguished cybersecurity executive and seasoned information security leader. Mr. Kennedy holds an MBA and MSIAC and carries globally recognized certifications including CISM, CISSP, and CCISO. He currently serves as the Director of Information Security at Community Health Centers Incorporated and is the Chief Executive Officer of Kartereo Security Incorporated. A proud U.S. Navy veteran, Mr. Kennedy brings extensive leadership experience in cybersecurity strategy, enterprise risk management, and digital infrastructure protection within healthcare systems. His work focuses on safeguarding sensitive health data, strengthening digital resilience, and mitigating cyber risks in increasingly technology-driven clinical environments. As operating rooms become more digitized and integrated with surgical systems, electronic health records, imaging technologies, and connected medical devices, the importance of cybersecurity in protecting patient safety and operations cannot be overstated. We're privileged to have Mr. Kennedy share his expertise with us today. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. DeJuan Kennedy.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for that welcome. I do appreciate the introduction. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sure can.
Yes, exactly. We can hear you.
All right, then let's get started. Okay, so okay, we're just going to make sure everyone can see my screen without incident, right?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, then. All right, so first, good morning, good afternoon, based upon where you're at, everyone. My name, as mentioned, is DeJuan Kennedy. I am the founder of Kartereo, a cybersecurity advisory firm. And today we're going to talk about cybersecurity in the operating room. However, we're going to put a little twist to it, as Jessie mentioned, right? We're not going to approach this as an IT issue. However, I'm going to approach this as a patient safety issue. All right, quick background. That guy you see right there with the lovely afro blowout haircut, okay? I just give you a quick background about me so you know who's in the room with you today. As mentioned, I started in nuclear engineering with the U.S. Navy. I continued working in highly regulated and cleared environments such as Lockheed Martin and Equifax. I spent the last several years inside healthcare serving as the Director of Information Security at a community health center. I didn't come to cybersecurity from a sales floor. I came from an environment where mistakes have consequences. And it is for that reason that Kartereo exists, is to bring that same discipline to organizations that need it the most. Not to sell technology, but to provide guidance. My job today is simple. It's to help you to protect what matters most. Okay. Let's start with what the OR is supposed to be, kind of as Jessie kind of referenced in his presentation. We're going to look at everything is working, right? As you mentioned, picture your last case. You got a patient's on the table, right? You have infusion pumps, surgical robots, imaging console. Every device on this network is a connection, it's a miracle of modern medicine. However, every device is also a door. And here's the kicker. With some of these doors, they were never locked to begin with, meaning anyone can come in. As mentioned, these systems are incredible, but every one of them depends on connectivity. The infusion pump, as mentioned, it delivers precise measured doses of medicine to the millimeter, right? We have the anesthesia machine, and for those who are going into the operating room, this machine is my friend. It keeps you unconscious, so I don't know what's going on. I don't have to look at dirty floors, but it also keeps you pain-free with the medicine. We have the surgical robot. The surgical robot, again, allows greater control than what the human can do alone, smaller incisions. And then we have the imaging console, right? That provides the surgeon with live visual data inside the patient. So why? Why would anybody wants to attack here, right? Well, it's not random. I mean, think about it. On the internet, a stolen credit card is worth about, what would you say, $10 on the dark web? However, a complete set of patient records is worth a patient record, one patient record is worth well over $100. And unlike a credit card, guess what? You can't cancel your medical history. Once it's out there, it's out there. You can pause a surgery that is currently in progress. If a patient is on the table, it's going to be a pretty much a risky event to go ahead and pause it, depending upon the state. And again, a bank can go offline. However, you cannot tell an anesthetist to wait. None of this is an accident. This is pure strategy. This is how it works. Now, as many of you have probably heard, I would say a show of raising hands and everything, but we had just recently attacked by a Striker cyber attack. Show of hands, just has anyone heard of that attack? Okay, now think about it. Guys, this just happened just 18 days ago, 18 days prior to this webinar. This is no longer hypothetical. This is no longer prose. We're not only saying Chicken Little, the sky is falling. This is occurring right now. Stryker, for any of them that is not familiar with Stryker, basically they manufacture surgical instruments and medical devices. They're basically in operating rooms worldwide. The particular thing about this attack is that there was no malware deployed. They used what we call living off the land. They used what was already Stryker's own systems. They did this through Microsoft. Why? Well, this has been linked to a nation state attack, right? So now one of the threats in the OR, guess what? We have attacks, right? Nation state attacks, APTs, we call them. Handala, they claim retaliation for a geopolitical conflict, basically for the war against Israel. And guess what? Stryker wasn't the only organization hit. There was a second attack, another U.S. healthcare organization. Now, this one, the compromise has been confirmed. However, it's a different group. And as more and more information is still developing about it, again, no one has pretty much said who no one has taken credit from it. Now, what we want to look at is that the thing I want to talk about is that they were already inside. However, they were quiet about it. Nobody knew they were there. Can you imagine walking in your house somewhere you thinking is safe, somewhere you thinking is secure, and you have a bad guy lurking behind the doors that you don't know there? Not many of us will feel that comfortable. No malware, again. They only used the tools that were there. They didn't bring a weapon. And this is not isolated. Different organizations, different methods, same direction. Everybody, this is a pattern. We're going to throw one more. We have the contact patient monitor. What I mentioned before, the wolf was at the door. But when we look at this, the wolf is already inside. It's already been confirmed there was a hidden back door. What were they doing? They were transmitting patient data to some location in China. No notification, no one knew anything. The code allowed them to remotely control the device that was on. This means that they were manipulating or could manipulate vital signs displayed on the screen. Imagine you have a case, you're in there, and what you're seeing on the screen, you can no longer trust, or you don't even know if you can trust it. An infusion pump, divvying out medicine, is telling you that, hey, this is coming out, but much more is coming out. You lose that patient visibility. It was to such an extent that this even triggered a government response. And even for the state of Texas, we have our Governor Abbott, he issued a statewide audit. And again, for April, I think next month, they have a state directed compliance timeline just for Texas, but other states are watching. This new environment that we're in, this is no longer theoretical. This is being acted upon right now. Just to give you some numbers, right? 93% of healthcare organizations experienced a cyber attack in the past year. This is no longer a minority problem. This is the industry. 279 days is the average time to identify and contain a healthcare breach. Think about that. That's almost long enough for somebody to have a baby, right? That's the entire time that you're carrying a baby, somebody's in your network. That entire time, they're there. 54% of organizations experience data loss. And of those, they reported an increased patient mortality. That's more than half. This is not a statistic. Everyone, this is becoming a pattern. This is now a pattern. How? How does this happen, right? We have phishing. Think about it. An email that sounds like it's from your charge nurse. But this time, guess what? It's written by AI in the matter of seconds. Instantly, convincing. Supply chain. Your vendor is compromised. You did everything right. However, guess what? You still get hit. Ransomware. Systems are encrypted, clock running, patient is still on the table. You can no longer access or see what's happening to that patient. You have lost complete visibility in most senses. Credential abuse. Again, malware not needed. No forced entry. They use the keys already inside the building. Basically, I got your login credentials and I'm going to use them. I don't need to get inside the network. This is no longer just one path. It's like having a house, right? But you no longer know how many doors, how many entrances, how many exits you have. But yet you're responsible. What's the security of those doors? Are they locked? Do they have locks? Are the windows open? So, what happened when the wolf wins? This is what it looks like when the wolf succeeds. And again, I'm painting a story kind of like walking through the woods, right? We have our operating environment that is the woods for us, the operating room. You're going to be Little Red Skywalker, Little Red Riding Hood, right? And then the wolf is the bad guy. But when he succeeds, we look at NHS Synovis, right? June 2024. Over 11,000 procedures were delayed or canceled. The first patient death in the UK formally linked to a cyber attack. Think about it. Not a diagnosis, not a medical error, a cyber attack. kind of changes the whole ground, right? We look at also Change Healthcare. 190 million Americans had their health data exposed. $6.3 billion drop in hospital claims in the first 3 weeks. Pharmacies couldn't fill prescriptions. We talk about improving patient outcomes. Think of the patients who no longer could get post-surgical pain medication. These are no longer edge cases. These are the new normal if we do not act. Now, the whole point is not to paint fear. We're not trying to incite fear, uncertainty, doubt. We're not trying to scare anybody, but we want to create an awareness. And that comes from preparedness. And how do we go about that? Report unusual behavior. Log it, escalate it immediately. Know your manual feedback. If you hesitate, then that is the gap right there. Don't click verify. 1 second of skepticism can abort or stop most attacks. Use strong, unique credentials. Clinical access is a direct path to patient data. And when I say unique, I mean not just yours is different from the person next to you. I mean, if you have one account credentials to access Windows, if you're logging onto that machine, then you should have a separate set of credentials for accessing health records. Because if you don't, and I get access to your Windows machine, I now have access to those health records and everything that you have access to. Participate in training. When your organization offers it, show up. Know your vendors, especially after Stryker. This one matters more than what it did a couple of weeks ago. We say that we are the first responders. You are the first sensor. Not IT, not your CISO. It's you. It all begins and ends with you. But here's a bright side, everyone. We say oftentimes it takes a village to raise a child, right? Well, here's the point. We're not in this alone. We have what we call information sharing analysis centers. We have other hospitals, everyone that gets together. We train. Every opportunity your organization offers, take it. As I said, use it to your advantage. Simulate. Basically, practice, practice, practice. Run your manual fallback before you need it. Muscle memory makes the difference in a crisis, right? You don't have to start to figure out what do I do now or what do I do next, right? Remember, hesitation, that's a gap. That's a problem. Breathe. Take 2 minutes in your OR huddle. What systems are connected today? Anything unusual this week? Escalate. And we all heard this before. If you see something, say something. You're not diagnosing a threat, you're just flagging it. And it is better in this sense where patient safety, patient outcome matters. It is better to err on the side of caution. Awareness creates protection, but it only does it when it's shared. So through our journey, we see that the forest remains. It's not changing. The operating environment is still there. The wolf remains. Unpredictable events, bad guys trying to get in, malicious attackers. That remains. But now, guess what? So does our resolve, our determination, our awareness. I put right on here this slide that cybersecurity is patient safety. This is not a new catchphrase or anything. It always has been about patient safety. We just hadn't named it yet. I have some questions for you also, some stimulated questions, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Farad, if anyone wants to start asking some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy. We will now begin the Q&A session, and Blessing would be moderating the questions. Please write your questions in the chat box and also mention the speaker's name since we have two speakers.
Oh, one more thing also. I'm sorry, but one more thing. I put over here, if anyone sees something today, again, I have it right here. Feel free to reach out to me at Kartereo, but also I wrote an article that will answer a lot of your questions, and it's called when we say we care about people, their data shouldn't be left behind. So we definitely want you to look into that and see how it's more than just your physical. Your digital identity is yourself in and of itself. So, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Thank you so much, our speakers. Thank you so much for the impactful section. And this is time for question and answer. Please, if you have any question for our speakers tonight, please do well to use the chat box and document your question. As we wait for the audience for their question, I will ask some questions, and my question goes to the first speaker, our speaker, Mr. Lopez. Please, my first question is, how can healthcare institutions build a non-punitive culture that encourage reporting of equipment related near misses and error?
Yes, that's a good question. Many facilities and we often learn that we should have a multidisciplinary team. Okay, this is very important in healthcare. Okay, every hand feeds the other. Can't have a left without a right. Can't have a forward without a back. Okay, the operating room relies on all the people that service them, and the people that service them relies on them. There should be a team member, a champion with each department of your facilities, having huddles or some kind of meeting weekly, monthly, whenever it's feasible, to communicate any kind of findings or deviation from processes in order to better serve one another, because ultimately everyone's goal is the same: patient safety and patient satisfaction. So communication is key, and you should always have someone from each department able to communicate with one another.
I have a
Thank you
question
so much
from
for-
Mr. Jessie Lopez.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Jessie. In case of any chemical or the blood spill inside the SPD or in the OR, and suppose if we don't have the spill kit, so how we can manage it?
Oh, that would be a problem if you don't have the spill kit. Okay, this is one
like in the developing countries, like in the Central Asia or in the African countries. So it's usually not available. So is there any recommended solution for this?
You would have to check with your local authorities on that one, and whatever governing guidance that you guys are using there, because again, you can't just for example, if you have some kind of chemical spill, you just can't just go grab some paper towels and just clean that up. Okay, you would have to have the right chemicals and the right formulations to do so. There's always alternatives, but you always have to reach to your guidance to find out what that alternative is. Spill kits don't have to be have to be manufacturer oriented or have to be produced by a manufacturer. There can be other alternatives. So a lot of those spill kits contain absorbent materials. You just have to know which absorbent materials won't react with the chemicals, and you can get all that information from your safety data sheets. Okay, and that's all available online. And dispose of it properly. Okay, because again, disposal is extremely important. Once you clean up certain spills or any body fluids, understanding which trash or which waste receptacle to put into or how to dispose of it through your municipalities.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you for your valuable answer.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lopez, I also have another question. Okay, from your experience, what proportion of equipment-related incidents in the operating room are due to human factors versus actual device malfunction? And how can institution effectively address both?
Again, this would have to be addressed with the actual manufacturers. Again, there are warranties for your devices, and biomed is your biomedical department is usually in tune with all of that equipment. Before any equipment is used in any facility, it has to go through your biomedical facilities or department in order to approve its usages. So they would have your direct answers to any of those questions or issues that you may have with your equipment.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I also have a question here for you in the chat box. The question from Animaria. The question is: in low-income countries where there is no smoke evacuation, what measures can be taken by staff to protect themselves?
Yes. So in the beginning, when this smoke evacuation happened, like when they made a big, this probably now a decade where we talked about smoke evacuation in the OR. The simple solution in the beginning was to just use suction devices near wherever they were cauterizing for evacuation. Now, in modern times, they have more intricate devices to help with smoke evacuation, but that's the simple solution, using a Yankar suction or a pool suction near wherever they're cauterizing to help reduce the amount of smoke that's produced during cauterization and cautery tools.
Thank you so much for all the answers. Okay, the next question will be for Dr. Kennedy. Okay, and I have some questions here from the chat box. Dr. Kennedy, the first question here says, how can cybersecurity in low-income country be functional and practical in our operating?
Well, one of the ways about cybersecurity is that it doesn't necessarily have to all be about budget. Some of the things that we can do is what we consider just basic cyber hygiene, right? One of the things, no cost, is using unique passwords, using longer passwords, having an idea of what you have in your environment, right? I can't protect if I don't know I have something, right? That's the same the analogy that we gave earlier about having a house but not having a knowledge of all the entrances or the exits in your house, right? How can I keep that house secure? So some of the things that we can do to limit a lot of the risk to the organization can be very inexpensive. Policies and procedures. Make sure that there is an expectation, which is what policies do. This is what we expect, right? And then procedures. How do we go about meeting those expectations? Making sure that we stay compliant, right? And although I say it all the time, compliance is not security, right? But compliance should be the floor and not the ceiling. So it's making sure that you have a base level of cyber hygiene. Some of the things you go through, as Jessie mentioned, are available online. NIST, you can go through and look at that. All right. NIST, NIST, it is a perfect recommendation. You can go through, it's free. It tells you not only what to do, but it also is prescriptive in telling you how to go about doing it. And many of these things are little to no cost. Does that kind of answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. The next question here is from Omar. The question says, how can we get protected by cybersecurity attack in operating room?
How can you become protected? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, the same way that we mentioned before, everything now is again connected as we went through. So we need to know basically what's being connected in the operating room. We need to make sure, I understand we cannot patch everything the moment a patch comes out due to the criticality of the equipment that we have, but we can have an idea of what is out there, right? What have a open communication with the vendors. What security flaws are out there? Start monitoring and logging who has access to what has been done, and just become a little bit more cost conscious. Basically, the same approach that we take when we're in the operating room, when we're operating on a person, apply some of that vigor also on the cyber side, just to make sure that, hey, all I's are dotted and all T's are crossed. Because some of the things that we do allow in cybersecurity, we would not dare to allow them in the operating room because of patient safety. Well, remember, it's not, well, we did discuss that it is patient safety now, but we also have that digital identity that we also have to protect. And many of these guys, guess what? They'll get in your network and they'll just sit and watch just so that they can spread, right? Kind of like a disease. They want to spread and see how far they can go. But awareness is the biggest boom that I think making sure that we know exactly what we have. And also, if you see something that's off, say something. It's not going to hurt, but keep in line with your vendors. Your vendors, we have a lot of people in the operating room, sales representatives, surgical robots. Let's make sure we secure the networks through which these also operate, right? And we're not going to even start scaring anybody with this whole thing about quantum encryption and all that stuff. That's just going to start another fear fire. But we have to start thinking ahead, right? Using AI, right? AI can start with AI. We can start launching attacks much quicker. And we just have to get on the other side of it and also use AI to defend those attacks that are being launched. Remember that email I can send to the charge as a charge nurse, and someone can click on it. We were in an environment where someone ended up clicking on an email that cost the company like $300,000. It was a business email compromise. They entered some correct credentials and they didn't find out until later that, hey, someone came through there and it was something different. So we just have to create that awareness.
Okay,
Great. Thank you
thank you so
so
much.
much.
Ooh, and
Dear
steer.
Blessing, I think we're almost at the end of this session. We want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I would say we can take one more question before we close.
Okay, just a follow-up question to Mr. Kennedy. For what about what practical cybersecurity strategies would you recommend for healthcare system with limited IT infrastructure and even funding?
For a healthcare system with limited funding, basically, I would recommend you're gonna have to verify, you mean your critical assets again, and patient safety should be the number one. But you have to go through segment your network. Some of the things we'll look at and basically break things up. There are some environments, especially small healthcare environments, that I've seen is that when I say segment, I mean you're going to put doors there, right? Doors. You're no longer have a open house layout, right? I'm now going to start putting walls and rooms up. And when that will segment everything. So in order for you to go from one room to the next, guess what? You're going to have to open the door. Well, don't just segment, but also put controls, or we call them access control lists. Put a lock on it so that if you do have a breach or if someone does get in, guess what? They can't easily go into another net. Can't easily go into the other side. So have someone might want to invest and just have someone come in there and make sure your network is set up properly, right? We want to minimize the access. And if you can, with limited budget, there are some service providers out there that will do it for a fee, but they will auto monitor because you want to make sure that, again, if someone is in your network, you want to make sure that you know that they're there. And we go back to network design. If in designing your network, you know that people in my house should only be going into from the living room to the kitchen, that's all they should be going. But all of a sudden, you see a door open and somebody went into your bedroom or someone went into another part of the house. If you have monitoring set up, then you know something has automatically flagged. And then guess what? You need to look there. So we have proper design, proper monitoring. And again, also remember everything foundation starts with just asset inventory. You need to know what you have in order for you to protect it. And once you know what you have, then you need to put all the precious stuff, you need to put that in a certain area and limit it and apply those controls to it, because not everything deserves the same level of protection. So basically make sure all your choices are cost conscious. Monitor what matters, basically. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. On behalf of the Operating Room Global, I would like to sincerely thank our speakers for their valuable insights and our participants for joining us from across different countries, time zones, and professional backgrounds. We recognize that many of you are participating despite busy clinical schedules, varying internet access, and language differences. We truly appreciate your commitment to learning and to improving surgical and preoperative care in your local settings. Please feel free to share your key lessons from today's session within your teams, institutions, and professional networks as part of strengthening safe and effective practice globally. We encourage you to stay connected with TORG, our upcoming webinars, training programs, and research activities, which are published on our websites and across our official platforms. To receive your TORG accredited training certificate, please note that immediately after the session, the evaluation and certification form will be open in the browser on your device and maintained active for 24 hours only. And certificates are issued within 5 to 7 working days after successful submission. Once again, thank you for being part of TORG Global community, and we wish you a safe, productive day or evening ahead, wherever you're joining from. And thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to supporting your continued professional development with the Operating Room Global.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Have a good one.
Enjoy.